The sun had already drunk her tears dry by the time Penelope Foster realized she was going to die alone in this God-forsaken stretch of Utah desert. Her lips cracked and bleeding, her body sprawled in the red dust where Marcus had thrown her from the wagon 3 days ago. She had stopped trying to walk yesterday, or maybe it was the day before. Time had become as fluid as the mirages that danced on the horizon, promising water that never came. Her fingers were still bound with the rough rope Marcus had tied before he left her here. 20 miles from anywhere that mattered, payment for the crime of refusing to marry his brother after her father's gambling debts had sold her like cattle. The rope had rubbed her wrists raw and bloody, but she had long since stopped feeling the pain there. Every other agony in her body had drowned it out. The April sun of 1883 was merciless in southern Utah, and Penelope had learned that dying of thirst was not the peaceful slipping away she had imagined in stories. It was fire in the throat, madness in the mind, and a desperate animal fear that clawed at her consciousness even as her body began to shut down. She had tried to pray, but even God seemed far away in this emptiness, as though heaven itself had abandoned this brutal landscape to the buzzards and the bones. When she heard the sound of hooves, she thought it was another hallucination, another cruel trick her dying mind was playing on her. But the sound grew louder, more distinct, accompanied by the creak of leather and the jingle of tack. She tried to lift her head, tried to call out, but her throat produced only a whisper of sound, less than a breath. The world was spinning, tilting, and she could not tell if she was looking at the sky or the ground anymore. Holy God! The voice was male, rough with shock and something that might have been anger. "Madam, madam, can you hear me?" Penelope felt hands on her shoulders, gentle despite their size, and then she was being turned over carefully. The face that swam into her blurred vision was young, maybe 25 or 26, with a strong jaw darkened by several days of stubble and eyes the color of a summer storm. He wore a dusty hat pushed back on dark hair, and there was genuine horror written across his features as he took in her condition. "Water," she managed to whisper, the word like broken glass in her throat. "Easy, easy now. I have got you." He reached for the canteen at his belt with swift, practiced movements, uncorking it with his teeth while supporting her head with his other hand. "Slow sips, understand? Too much too fast will make you sick." The first touch of water on her lips was ecstasy and agony combined. She wanted to gulp, to drink until the desert inside her was drowned, but he controlled the flow, letting only small amounts pass her cracked lips. It hurt to swallow, hurt like swallowing knives, but it was the most beautiful pain she had ever known because it meant she was still alive, still capable of feeling anything at all. "That is it, just a little at a time." His voice was steady, calm, the kind of voice that knew how to soothe frightened horses and probably frightened women too. "You have been out here a while, have you not?" She managed a tiny nod, and he cursed under his breath, low and heartfelt. He gave her another careful sip, then pulled the canteen back despite the desperate sound she made in protest. I know, but we have to go slow. Trust me on this." He was looking at her bound wrists now, and his jaw tightened with what looked like fury. "Who did this to you?" Penelope could not answer, could not form the words yet. Her tongue felt too thick, her mind too scattered. She just looked at him with eyes that must have shown all her desperation, all her gratitude, all her disbelief that someone had actually found her. "Never mind, we will talk later. First things first." He pulled a knife from his belt and she flinched instinctively despite knowing he meant to help. "It is all right. I am just cutting these ropes. My name is Isaiah Young, and I promise you, whatever happened out here, you are safe now." The ropes fell away, and the sudden rush of blood back into her hands made her whimper. He noticed, setting down the knife to gently massage her wrists, careful of the raw wounds there. His hands were calloused, the hands of a man who worked for his living, but his touch was remarkably gentle. "Can you tell me your name?" he asked, giving her another small sip of water. "Penelope," she whispered. "Penelope Foster." "Well, Miss Foster, we need to get you out of this sun and somewhere safe. I have a camp about a mile from here near a spring. Do you think you can ride if I help you?" She wanted to say yes, wanted to be strong, but honesty forced her to shake her head slightly. She did not think her legs would hold her even if he got her upright, and the thought of trying to stay in a saddle made her dizzy. "All right, then. I will carry you." Before she could protest, he was sliding one arm under her knees and the other behind her shoulders, lifting her as though she weighed nothing at all. She was not a small woman, but 3 days without water or food had left her lighter than she should have been. And Isaiah Young was clearly strong enough that it made little difference anyway. He settled her carefully in front of his saddle on his big bay gelding, then swung up behind her with easy grace, one arm wrapped securely around her waist to keep her steady. The horse started forward at his quiet command, and Penelope let herself sag back against his chest, too exhausted and too grateful to care about propriety. She could feel his heartbeat against her back, strong and steady, an anchor in a world that had tilted too far sideways. "Stay with me now," Isaiah said near her ear as her eyes started to drift closed. "We are not far, but I need you to stay awake a little longer. Talk to me. Tell me where you are from." "Circleville," she managed, forcing her eyes open. "Small town north of here. I know it. Passed through there a few weeks back. How did you end up out here in the middle of nowhere?" The memory brought tears that her dehydrated body could not quite produce. "Marcus Brennan. He and his brother, they claimed I owed them because of my father's debts. Said I had to marry Thomas Brennan or they would take payment another way. I refused, and Marcus brought me out here, said if I would not be useful, I could die useful, as a warning to others who did not pay what they owed." The arm around her waist tightened, and she felt more than heard the growl in Isaiah's chest. "That is murder, plain and simple. When we get you fixed up, we are going to the law about this." "Circleville does not have much law," Penelope said bitterly, "and the Brennans have money. That buys a lot of looking the other way. Maybe in Circleville. But there are marshals, territorial judges. What they did to you cannot stand." She wanted to believe him, wanted to have that much faith in justice, but she had seen too much of how the world really worked. Still, she was too tired to argue, and the gentle rocking motion of the horse was threatening to pull her under despite his instruction to stay awake. "Tell me about yourself," Isaiah said, clearly trying to keep her talking. "What did you do in Circleville before all this?" "I worked at the boarding house. Cooking, cleaning, helping with the guests. My mother died when I was 15, and my father, he started drinking after that. Started gambling. By the time he died 6 months ago, he had debts all over town, and I inherited every one of them. That is a heavy burden for someone so young. How old are you, if you do not mind my asking?" 22. 23 in July if I live that long." She meant it as a weak joke, but it came out sounding too real, too close to what had almost happened. "You will live a lot longer than that," Isaiah said firmly. "I found you, did I not? That has to count for something." "What were you doing out here?" Penelope asked, realizing she knew nothing about this man except that he had saved her life. "This is not exactly on any main road." "Tracking strays. I work for the Double J Ranch about 15 miles southwest of here. Some of our cattle wandered off during a storm last week, and I have been riding the range looking for them. Found you instead of longhorns, but I think that is a better day's work." Despite everything, Penelope felt the corner of her mouth twitch in what might have been a smile under better circumstances. "I am glad your cows ran away then." "Me too," Here we are, just ahead. The camp was simple but well organized, set up in the shade of a rocky outcropping near a small spring that bubbled up from the red earth. There was a bedroll, saddlebags, a small fire ring with the remains of a morning fire, and evidence that Isaiah had been camping here for a few days. He dismounted carefully, then reached up to lift her down, carrying her to the bedroll and settling her onto it with surprising care. "Let me get this blanket over you. You have had too much sun, and your body needs to recover slowly." He draped a light blanket over her despite the heat, then retrieved his canteen again. More water, small sips. This time she was able to hold the canteen herself, though her hands shook badly. Isaiah knelt beside her, watching carefully to make sure she did not drink too fast. When she had taken several small sips, he took it back and set it within her reach. "I am going to tend to your wrists if you will let me. Those rope burns need to be cleaned or they will fester." Penelope nodded, too tired to do anything but comply. She watched as he retrieved a small kit from his saddlebags and poured some water into a tin cup, then tore a strip from what looked like a clean shirt. He worked with gentle efficiency, cleaning the raw wounds on her wrists and ankles where the ropes had cut in, his face set in hard lines as he saw the full extent of the damage. "This is going to sting," he warned before applying some kind of salve from a small tin. He was right. It burned like fire, but Penelope bit her lip and bore it. She had survived 3 days in the desert. She could survive this. "You did well," Isaiah said quietly as he wrapped her wrists in clean strips of cloth. "Most men I know would have yelled." "I do not have the energy to yell," Penelope admitted. "I barely have the energy to talk." "Then rest. Sleep if you can. You are safe here, I give you my word. I will keep watch, and when you wake up we will get some food in you." "Why are you helping me?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "You do not know me. You could have just ridden past." Isaiah looked at her with those storm-gray eyes, and there was something in them that made her breath catch despite her exhaustion. "What kind of man would I be if I rode past a woman dying in the desert? Besides, no one deserves what was done to you. No one." "Thank you," Penelope whispered, feeling tears finally gather in her eyes now that there was moisture in her body to produce them. "Thank you for my life." "You are welcome. Now rest. We will figure out the next steps when you are stronger." She wanted to stay awake, wanted to know more about this man who had appeared like a miracle in her darkest moment, but her body had other ideas. The moment she closed her eyes, sleep dragged her under like a riptide, and she went without fighting when Penelope woke. The sun had moved significantly across the sky, and there was a delicious smell in the air that made her stomach clench with sudden, desperate hunger. She turned her head and saw Isaiah crouched by the fire, tending to something in a small pan. He must have sensed her movement because he looked over and gave her a slight smile. "Welcome back. How are you feeling?" "Like I was left to die in the desert," Penelope said, then was surprised to find herself almost laughing at the absurdity of the statement. "But better than I was." "That is good. That is a start." He came over with the pan and a fork, lowering himself to sit cross-legged beside the bedroll. "I have some salt pork and beans here, nothing fancy, but it will help get your strength back. Think you can eat?" "I think I could eat a whole cow," Penelope admitted, struggling to sit up. Isaiah immediately set down the pan to help her, propping her up against his saddle so she could sit somewhat upright. "Easy does it. Start slow, same as with the water. Your stomach has been empty a while and we do not want to shock it." He was right to be cautious. The first few bites of food were strange, her stomach unsure what to do with actual sustenance after days of nothing. But then hunger took over, and she ate steadily while Isaiah watched, occasionally reminding her to slow down. When she had eaten about half of what he had prepared, she felt suddenly full, almost nauseous. "That is all right, you did well," Isaiah assured her, taking back the pan. "You can eat more later. Let that settle first." He offered her the canteen again, and she drank gratefully, amazed at how much better water tasted when you were not dying of thirst. "What time is it?" she asked, realizing she had completely lost her sense of the day. "About 3 in the afternoon. You slept for almost 4 hours." Isaiah set aside the pan and turned to face her fully. "Miss Foster, we need to talk about what happens next. You need real medical attention, food, rest, and safety. The question is where we go to get you those things." "Not Circleville," Penelope said immediately. "I cannot go back there. The Brennans will find out I survived, and next time they will not bother with the desert. They will just put a bullet in me and be done with it." Isaiah nodded slowly, as though he had expected that answer. "What about family? Anyone in another town who would take you in?" "No one. My mother's people were back east, and we lost touch years ago. My father's family disowned him when he married her, said she was not good enough for them. I have no one." She tried to keep the despair out of her voice, but she could hear it anyway, bitter and defeated. She was alive, which was more than she had expected to be, but alive to do what? To go where? The Brennans owned most of Circleville, and they had a long reach in the surrounding territories. Even if she ran, how far would she get with no money, no friends, and no protection? "You have me," Isaiah said quietly. Penelope looked at him sharply. "What? You have me," he repeated, meeting her eyes steadily. "I know we just met, and you have no reason to trust me beyond the fact that I gave you water and did not leave you to die. But I cannot in good conscience take you somewhere and leave you to fend for yourself, not when there are men who want you dead. So you have me, at least until we figure out something better." "You cannot just take responsibility for a strange woman," Penelope protested. "You have your own life, your job at the ranch. You said you work for the Double J." "I do, and my boss is a fair man. The ranch is big enough and remote enough that you would be safe there, at least for a while. We have a housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, who could use some help now that her daughter moved to Salt Lake City. You said you worked at a boarding house, so you know your way around cooking and cleaning. You are offering me a job." Penelope could hardly believe what she was hearing. "I am offering you a chance," Isaiah corrected. "A safe place to recover, honest work, and time to figure out your next move. Or if you like it there, you could stay on permanently. Like I said, Mrs. Chen really could use the help." "Why would you do this for me?" Penelope asked again, needing to understand. "You do not know anything about me." "I could be a thief, a liar, anything." Isaiah was quiet for a moment, his eyes distant as though looking at something she could not see. 3 years ago, my younger sister was in a bad situation. Man she thought loved her turned out to be cruel, violent. She tried to leave, and he nearly killed her. If a stranger had not stepped in, had not given her help when she needed it most, I would have lost her. She is alive now, safe and married to a good man up in Wyoming, because someone chose to help when they did not have to. He refocused on Penelope. "I cannot save everyone, but I can save you, and that is what I am going to do." Penelope felt tears slide down her cheeks, these ones having nothing to do with dehydration and everything to do with the overwhelming relief of not being alone, not being abandoned. "I do not know how to thank you." "You do not need to thank me. You just need to get better, get stronger. The rest we will figure out as we go." They stayed at the spring camp for 2 more days while Penelope recovered enough strength to travel. Isaiah proved to be surprisingly easy company, quiet when she needed silence, conversational when she felt up to talking. He told her about the Double J Ranch, owned by James and Julia Jackson, a couple in their 50s who had built the ranch from nothing over the past 20 years. He described the land, the vast stretches of Utah wilderness where cattle grazed and the sky seemed to go on forever. He talked about his work, the long days in the saddle, the satisfaction of good, honest labor. In turn, Penelope found herself opening up in ways she had not expected. She told him about her mother, a gentle woman who had loved books and music and had done her best to bring culture to a rough frontier town. She talked about her father before the drinking, when he had been loving and kind, before grief and weakness had destroyed him. She even spoke, haltingly, about the weeks after her father's death when the Brennans had come calling with their demands and their threats. "Thomas Brennan is 53 years old," she said on the second evening as they sat by the fire. "He has been married twice before. Both wives died under suspicious circumstances, but no one ever investigated too closely. He wanted me because I am young, and because he likes the idea of breaking someone to his will. Marcus is worse in his way. He enjoys the cruelty, enjoys having power over people who cannot fight back." "They will answer for what they have done," Isaiah said, his voice hard. "Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but men like that always get what is coming to them eventually." "I want to believe that," Penelope said. "I really do." On the third morning, Isaiah declared her well enough to travel. She was still weak, still bearing the marks of her ordeal, but she could walk without feeling like she might collapse, and her mind was clear. He saddled his horse and helped her mount, settling himself behind her once more. The arrangement was intimate, improper by any standard of decent society, but necessity overrode propriety, and Penelope found she did not mind. She felt safe in the circle of his arms, protected in a way she had not felt in longer than she could remember. The ride to the Double J took the better part of the day. They traveled southwest through country that grew gradually less barren, more grassy, with rocky mesas rising in the distance and occasional stands of juniper breaking up the landscape. Isaiah pointed out landmarks as they rode, telling her about the land and its moods, the way it changed with the seasons. He clearly loved this wild country, and his affection for it was infectious. It was late afternoon when they finally rode through a wooden gate with a brand burned into the crosspiece, 2 Jadakas back to back. The ranch house came into view a few minutes later, a low, sprawling building of wood and stone with a wide porch and several outbuildings scattered around it. Corrals held horses, and in the distance, Penelope could see cattle grazing across the hills. Several people looked up as they approached, their expressions curious. Isaiah dismounted first, then helped Penelope down, keeping a steadying hand on her elbow as her legs adjusted to being on solid ground again. "Isaiah, we were starting to wonder if the desert had swallowed you up." The man who approached was in his 50s with graying hair and a weathered face, but his smile was warm and genuine. "Did you find our strays?" "Found something more important, boss." Isaiah kept his hand on Penelope's elbow, a gesture of support and protection. "This is Miss Penelope Foster. She was in a bad situation, and she needs help. I told her the Double J was a place where good people look after their own." The man's eyes sharpened as he took in Penelope's condition, the visible evidence of her ordeal. His expression hardened briefly, then softened into something like compassion. "James Jackson," he said, offering his hand. "You are welcome here, Miss Foster. Anyone Isaiah vouches for is welcome. Julia," he called toward the house. "Julia, come meet our guest." A woman emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. She was handsome rather than pretty, with kind eyes and an air of competence. "What is all the commotion? Isaiah, you are back. And who is this?" "This is Miss Foster, and she has had a rough time of it," James said quietly. "She needs a safe place to stay and time to heal." Julia Jackson took one look at Penelope and immediately switched into what was clearly her caretaker mode. "Good heavens, child, you look like you have been through hell and back. Come with me right now, we are getting you into a proper bed and some proper food. Isaiah, bring her things. James, stop standing there and make yourself useful." "Yes, dear," James said with the patient tone of a man long accustomed to his wife's commanding ways. He gave Isaiah a meaningful look. "We will talk later." Isaiah nodded, retrieving his saddlebags and following as Julia led Penelope toward the house, keeping up a steady stream of kind but no-nonsense commentary. "You will stay in the guest room, at least until we figure out something more permanent. Mrs. Chen will help me get you settled. You look like you need a bath, some real food, and about a week of sleep, in that order." The inside of the ranch house was comfortable and well lived in, with sturdy furniture and touches that spoke of Julia's hand making a home in the wilderness. She led Penelope to a small bedroom with a real bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out over the ranch. "This is yours for as long as you need it. Now sit down before you fall down, and I will get water heated for a bath. Mrs. Jackson, I do not want to be a burden," Penelope started, but Julia waved her off. "Nonsense. Isaiah does not bring home strays unless they need bringing, and you clearly need somewhere safe to land. We will sort out the details later. For now, you are a guest, and we take care of our guests at the Double J." Over the next hour, Penelope was introduced to Mrs. Chen, a Chinese woman in her 40s with efficient hands and a gentle manner, and subjected to the wonderful luxury of a hot bath. Mrs. Chen provided clean clothes, simple but well made, and helped her wash her hair and tend to her healing wrists. By the time Penelope was clean, dressed, and sitting down to dinner in the ranch house kitchen, she felt more human than she had in weeks. Dinner was a lively affair. Besides James and Julia, there were two ranch hands, both young men in their early 20s who treated Isaiah with the easy camaraderie of co-workers who liked each other. They were curious about Penelope but polite enough not to ask direct questions, taking their cues from Isaiah's protective silence on the subject. Mrs. Chen served a wonderful meal of roast chicken, vegetables, and fresh bread, and Penelope ate until she was actually full for the first time in days. After dinner, Isaiah walked her back to the guest room, hovering in the doorway as though uncertain whether he should stay or go. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. "Really all right?" "I am better than all right," Penelope said honestly. "Your friends, they are wonderful. I did not expect such a warm welcome. I told you they are good people, and you are not a burden no matter what you might think. You are someone who needs help, and that is what we do here. We help." He paused, then added, "I will be in the bunkhouse with the other hands if you need anything. Just tell Mrs. Chen or Julia and they will fetch me. Isaiah." Penelope caught his hand before he could leave, squeezing gently. "Thank you for everything, for finding me, for saving me, for bringing me here. I owe you my life." "You do not owe me anything," Isaiah said, but his hand squeezed back, warm and strong. "Just get better, get stronger. That is all I ask." He left, and Penelope closed the door, leaning against it for a moment as emotions she had been holding back threatened to overwhelm her. She was safe. She was fed, clean, warm, and safe. 3 days ago she had been dying alone in the desert, and now she was here in this place with these people who barely knew her but had taken her in anyway. And Isaiah. Isaiah with his storm-gray eyes and his gentle hands, and his absolute certainty that helping her was the right thing to do. She barely knew him, had known him less than a week, but something in her recognized something in him, as though they were two pieces that fit together in a way that transcended logic or reason. She climbed into the bed, marveling at the softness of the mattress, the clean smell of the sheets. Within minutes, she was asleep, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she slept without nightmares. The days that followed developed a rhythm. Penelope recovered her strength quickly under Mrs. Chen's careful feeding and Julia's mothering. Within a week, she was insisting on helping around the house, refusing to be idle when there was work to be done. She fell naturally into helping Mrs. Chen with the cooking and cleaning, and the older woman seemed grateful for the assistance and the company. Isaiah was around the ranch most days, though his work often took him out on the range for hours at a time. When he was there, he always seemed to find reasons to be near wherever Penelope was working, offering to help carry heavy things or fix whatever needed fixing. They fell into easy conversation, learning more about each other in small increments. Penelope discovered that Isaiah had grown up on a small farm in Colorado, the oldest of 4 children. His parents had died in a diphtheria outbreak when he was 19, and he had sold the farm to ensure his siblings had the means to make their own ways in the world. He had drifted for a few years, working various ranches, before landing at the Double J 3 years ago and staying because he liked the work and respected the Jacksons. "You miss Colorado?" Penelope asked one evening as they sat on the porch after dinner, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. "Sometimes," Isaiah admitted. "I miss my siblings, though we write when we can, but this feels like home now. The Double J, this land, the work, it suits me." "It is beautiful here," Penelope said, looking out over the ranch. "Different from Circleville, but beautiful in its own way." "Do you miss it? Circleville, I mean." "I miss what it was before everything went wrong. I miss my mother, I miss my father when he was still himself. But the place itself, the people who let the Brennans do what they did. No, I do not miss that." Isaiah was quiet for a moment, then said carefully, "You know you are safe here, right? The Brennans have no reach this far, and even if they did, they would have to go through me and James and every hand on this ranch to get to you. That is not going to happen. I know. I am starting to believe it anyway." Penelope turned to look at him. "It is strange, you know. 3 weeks ago I thought my life was over. Now I feel like it is just beginning." "Maybe it is," Isaiah said, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Maybe you get a second chance, a fresh start." "Maybe we both do," Penelope said softly, and the look that passed between them held a weight of meaning that neither was quite ready to speak aloud yet. As April turned into May, Penelope settled more fully into life at the Double J. She was officially hired on to help Mrs. Chen, which gave her a wage of her own and a sense of purpose beyond just existing. The work was hard but satisfying, and she found she genuinely enjoyed the rhythm of ranch life, the way everyone worked together toward common goals. She grew close to Julia, who treated her like the daughter she had never had, teaching her the finer points of ranch management and sharing stories of the early days when she and James had been building their dream from nothing. Mrs. Chen taught her Chinese cooking techniques and herbal remedies, skills that would serve her well no matter where life took her. But it was Isaiah who occupied more and more of her thoughts. They spent increasing amounts of time together, sometimes working side by side when he was around the ranch buildings, sometimes just talking in the evenings when the day's work was done. She learned that he loved to read, that he had a dry sense of humor that caught her by surprise and made her laugh, that he had a deep sense of honor that governed everything he did. She also learned that he was watching her with the same increasing attention that she watched him. His eyes followed her when he thought she was not looking. He found excuses to be near her, to touch her hand or shoulder in passing. And when they talked, there was an undercurrent of something building between them, something neither had yet named but both clearly felt. It was James who finally addressed the elephant that everyone on the ranch could see. Penelope was in the kitchen helping Mrs. Chen prepare dinner when James came in and asked if he could speak with her privately. They went to his office, a comfortable room lined with books and ranch records, and he gestured for her to sit. "Miss Foster, Penelope, you have been with us almost 2 months now, and I want you to know that you have been a valuable addition to our household. Mrs. Chen sings your praises daily, and Julia is delighted to have another woman around. But I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Of course," Penelope said, feeling nervous without quite knowing why. "What are your intentions toward Isaiah?" Penelope felt her face heat. "Sir, I do not know what you mean." "I think you do. Isaiah is a good man, one of the best I have ever known. He works hard, he is honest, and he has principles most men only pretend to have. He has also been alone for a long time, focused on his work and his responsibilities. In all the time he has worked for me, I have never seen him look at a woman the way he looks at you. Mr. Jackson, I would never do anything to compromise Isaiah or abuse the hospitality you have shown me," Penelope said earnestly. "I know that. I am not accusing you of anything. I am simply observing that there is something growing between you two, and I want to make sure you understand that if that is something you want to pursue, you have my blessing and Julia's. Isaiah has no family to speak for him, so I am taking that role. He is like a son to us, and I want him to be happy. If you make him happy and he makes you happy, then I am all for it." Penelope felt tears prick her eyes. "He saved my life. I do not know how to separate gratitude from whatever else I might be feeling." "That is a fair concern," James acknowledged. "But let me ask you this. You think about him when he is not around. Do you find yourself looking forward to seeing him? Does your heart beat faster when he walks into a room?" "Yes," Penelope whispered. "Yes to all of it." "That is not gratitude, child. That is something much more interesting. My advice: give it time, let it grow naturally, but do not be afraid of it. Life is short and hard out here, and happiness is not something to turn away from when you find it. What if I am not good enough for him? What if my past, the Brennans, all of it, what if it comes back to hurt him? Then we will deal with it together as a ranch family, but you cannot live your life in fear of what might happen. You can only live it the best way you know how and trust that things will work out the way they are meant to." Over the next few weeks, Penelope took James's advice to heart. She stopped second-guessing her feelings and simply let herself enjoy Isaiah's company. Let herself appreciate the way he made her laugh, the way he listened when she talked, the way he looked at her like she was something precious. One evening in early June, Isaiah asked if she would like to go for a ride with him the next day, his day off. "There is a place I want to show you if you are interested. Beautiful country, not too far from here." "I would like that," Penelope said, her heart doing that now familiar flutter. They set out after breakfast, Penelope riding one of the ranch's gentle mares while Isaiah rode his bay gelding. He led them northeast, across rolling grassland and up into rocky country, where juniper and pine trees grew in scattered groves. They rode for about 2 hours before cresting a ridge, and Penelope gasped at the view spread out before them. A valley opened up below, lush and green, with a creek running through it and wildflowers blooming in vivid patches of color. The walls of the valley were red rock, and the contrast between the green and the red was stunningly beautiful. "This is incredible," Penelope breathed. "I found it my first year here," Isaiah said. "I come up here sometimes when I need to think, to remember why I love this land. I wanted to share it with you." They dismounted and let the horses graze while they walked down into the valley. Isaiah spread a blanket near the creek and they sat down, surrounded by the sound of running water and birdsong. "Penelope," Isaiah said after a comfortable silence, I need to talk to you about something, and I am not sure how to start." "Just start," Penelope said, turning to face him. He took a breath. "These past 2 months, having you at the ranch, getting to know you, I have come to care about you a great deal. More than I probably should, given how we met and the circumstances. But I cannot help how I feel, and I do not want to hide it anymore." Penelope felt her heart begin to race. "Isaiah, let me finish, please. I know you might not feel the same way. I know you might still be sorting out what you feel versus what you think you should feel. But I needed you to know that this is not just protective instinct or feeling responsible for you. This is me, falling for you, wanting more than friendship if you are willing to give it." "You think I might not feel the same way?" Penelope asked, and then she did something she had been wanting to do for weeks. She leaned forward and kissed him. For a heartbeat, Isaiah froze in surprise, but then his arms came around her and he was kissing her back with a fervor that made her head spin. It was not a gentle kiss, not tentative or uncertain. It was the kiss of a man who had been holding back and was finally letting himself feel everything he had been suppressing. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Isaiah rested his forehead against hers. "So that is a yes, then?" "That is a yes," Penelope confirmed, laughing a little breathlessly. "I have been falling for you too, probably since the moment you gave me water and told me I was going to be all right. I tried to tell myself it was just gratitude, just circumstance, but it is so much more than that." "Thank God," Isaiah said, and kissed her again, this time slower, deeper, full of promise. They spent the rest of the day in that valley, talking and kissing and making plans for a future that suddenly seemed bright with possibility. Isaiah made it clear that he wanted to court her properly, wanted to do things right despite the unusual circumstances of their meeting. Penelope agreed, appreciating his respect even as part of her wanted to rush forward into everything they could be together. When they returned to the ranch that evening hand in hand, Julia took one look at them and smiled knowingly. "About time," was all she said, but her approval was evident. The summer passed in a blur of happiness. Isaiah courted Penelope with old-fashioned determination, bringing her wildflowers, taking her on rides to beautiful places, sitting with her in the evenings, and talking about everything and nothing. He kissed her often, sweet stolen moments when they could find privacy, but he never pushed for more, never took advantage despite the clear chemistry between them. Penelope bloomed under his attention, gaining back the weight she had lost and more, her skin turning golden from time in the sun, her eyes bright with happiness. She felt beautiful for the first time in her life, not because of anything external but because of the way Isaiah looked at her, like she was the most amazing thing he had ever seen. In late July, on the evening of her 23rd birthday, Isaiah took her back to the valley where they had first confessed their feelings. This time, he had a picnic packed, and they ate as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant colors. "Penelope," Isaiah said as the stars began to emerge overhead, "I have something to ask you." He pulled a small box from his pocket, and Penelope's breath caught as he opened it to reveal a simple gold band with a small sapphire set in it. "It was my mother's," Isaiah said quietly. "The only thing I kept when I sold the farm. I have been carrying it for years, waiting to find the right woman to give it to. Penelope Foster, I love you. I love your strength, your kindness, your courage. I love the way you make me laugh and the way you see the world. I love everything about you, and I want to spend the rest of my life showing you just how much. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Penelope said through happy tears. "Yes, absolutely yes." Isaiah slipped the ring on her finger, and it fit perfectly as though it had been made for her. Then he kissed her with a passion that made her feel like she was flying, like everything that had been broken in her life had finally been mended. They were married on a bright September day, in the parlor of the ranch house with all the ranch hands and Mrs. Chen and the Jacksons gathered around. Penelope wore a dress Julia had helped her make, simple white muslin with lace trim, and she carried wildflowers from the valley Isaiah loved. Isaiah wore his best suit, his hair freshly cut, his eyes shining with love and pride. The ceremony was performed by a traveling preacher who happened to be passing through, and when Isaiah kissed his bride, the small group erupted in cheers and applause. Julia cried happy tears. James clapped Isaiah on the back with fatherly pride, and Mrs. Chen presented them with a beautiful Chinese wedding quilt she had been secretly making for weeks. The Jacksons gave them 3 days away from the ranch as a wedding gift, and Isaiah took Penelope back to the valley, where he had set up a proper camp with a tent and supplies. Those 3 days were a revelation, a deepening of their connection that went beyond the physical into something spiritual. They talked for hours, made love under the stars, and planned the life they would build together. "I want to build us a house," Isaiah said on their last morning in the valley. "Nothing fancy but ours, a place that is just for us where we can raise our family." "A family," Penelope repeated, loving the sound of it. "How many children do you want?" "As many as God sees fit to give us," Isaiah said, pulling her close. "Boys, girls, it does not matter as long as they are healthy and happy and ours." When they returned to the ranch, they moved into a small cabin that had been used for storage, cleaned and furnished by the ranch hands as a surprise. It was cozy and simple, but it was theirs, their first home together. Life settled into a new rhythm. Penelope continued to help Mrs. Chen, though now she was working more on building a home of her own, learning to cook the way Isaiah liked, keeping their small cabin clean and welcoming. Isaiah continued his ranch work, but now he came home to her every evening, to her smile and her kiss and the small domestic comforts that made even the hardest day worthwhile. In December, Penelope realized she was pregnant. She told Isaiah on Christmas Eve, presenting him with a small knitted baby blanket she had been working on in secret. He looked at it for a long moment, not understanding, and then his eyes went wide. "Penelope, are you saying?" "We are going to have a baby," she confirmed, laughing as he swept her up in his arms and spun her around, whooping with joy. Their son was born in late August of 1884, a healthy baby boy with his father's gray eyes and his mother's dark hair. They named him Samuel, after Isaiah's father, and he was immediately doted on by everyone on the ranch. Julia and Mrs. Chen both spoiled him shamelessly. The ranch hands competed to make him smile, and James declared himself an honorary grandfather. Isaiah was a devoted father, tender with his son in a way that made Penelope fall in love with him all over again. He would walk Samuel around in the evenings when the baby was fussy, singing old songs in a soft voice. He made a cradle with his own hands, carving designs into the wood, and a rocking horse for when Samuel was older. Watching him with their son, Penelope sometimes thought back to that day in the desert, to the moment she had given up hope and resigned herself to death. It seemed like a lifetime ago, like something that had happened to a different person. That woman had been broken, defeated, alone. This woman, the woman she was now, was loved and cherished and valued. She had a husband who looked at her like she hung the moon, a son who was the joy of her life, and a place where she truly belonged. 2 years later they had a daughter, Abigail, who came into the world squalling with indignation and never quite stopped. She was a force of nature from the beginning, stubborn and fierce and absolutely fearless. Isaiah adored her, and Penelope loved watching her rough cowboy husband be wrapped around the tiny finger of his baby girl. In the spring of 1887, James and Julia sat them down for a serious conversation. "We are getting older," James said bluntly, "and we do not have children of our own to pass the ranch to. We have been talking, and we would like you and Penelope to consider becoming partners in the Double J. Eventually, when we are gone, it would be yours to run as you see fit." Isaiah and Penelope were stunned. "Sir, that is too much," Isaiah protested. "We cannot accept something like that." "You already have," Julia said gently. "You have been running more and more of the day-to-day operations over the past few years, Isaiah, and you do it well. You love this land the way we do. And Penelope, you have made this house a home in ways I never could. You both belong here. This should be yours." After much discussion and not a few tears, they agreed. The legal papers were drawn up, and Isaiah and Penelope Young became official partners in the Double J Ranch. The weight of that responsibility was heavy, but it was also right. This place had saved Penelope's life, had given them both a future. Now they would ensure it continued for the next generation. The years rolled by, marked by hard work and steady growth. They expanded the ranch, brought in better breeding stock, weathered droughts and harsh winters. Samuel grew into a bright, curious boy who loved the ranch and the animals. Abigail became the wild child who could outride most of the ranch hands by the time she was 10. They had a third child in 1889, another boy they named Thomas, who was quiet and bookish and preferred helping his mother in the garden to working with the cattle. Through it all, Isaiah and Penelope's love deepened and matured. They had their disagreements, their difficult times, but they always came back to the foundation they had built that day in the desert, when he had given her water and hope, and a reason to keep living. That bond, forged in crisis and tested by life, was unbreakable. James Jackson passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1892, and Julia followed him less than a year later, her heart apparently unable to bear being without her partner. The ranch grieved them both, but the Double J continued under Isaiah and Penelope's leadership. They honored the Jacksons' memory by running the ranch with the same fairness and integrity that James and Julia had always shown. In 1895, a letter arrived from Circleville. Penelope almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity got the better of her. It was from a woman named Martha Brennan, Thomas Brennan's third wife, writing to inform her that both Thomas and Marcus Brennan had been killed in a range war with a neighboring ranch. "I thought you should know," the letter said, "because I remember how they treated you. They got what was coming to them in the end. I hope you have found happiness wherever you landed." Penelope showed the letter to Isaiah that evening. He read it carefully, then set it aside. "How do you feel?" "I do not know," Penelope admitted. "I should feel something, should not I? Relief, vindication. But mostly I just feel nothing. They are part of a past that does not matter anymore." "That is probably healthy," Isaiah said, pulling her into his arms. "They do not get to matter, not when we have all this." He gestured to their home, to the sounds of their children playing outside, to the life they had built. "You are right," Penelope said, leaning into his embrace. "They are nothing, and this is everything." As the new century approached, the Double J Ranch thrived. Samuel was preparing to take on more responsibility, learning the business side of ranching from his father. Abigail had shocked everyone by announcing her intention to go to college in California to study veterinary medicine. Thomas had discovered a talent for drawing and painting the western landscapes he loved. Isaiah and Penelope, now in their late 30s and early 40s, had settled into the comfortable rhythm of long marriage. They still loved each other fiercely, still found joy in each other's company. Gray was threading through Isaiah's dark hair, and Penelope had laugh lines around her eyes, but to each other, they were just as they had been on their wedding day. One evening in the summer of 1899, they sat on the porch of the main house they had rebuilt and expanded over the years, watching the sunset. Samuel was out on the range with the hands, Abigail was visiting a friend in town, and Thomas was in his room drawing. For a rare moment it was just the two of them. "You ever think about that day?" Isaiah asked quietly. "The day I found you, sometimes," Penelope admitted. "Not often anymore, but sometimes. It feels like it happened to someone else in another lifetime. I think about it more than I probably should. I think about what would have happened if I had ridden a different direction that day. If I had been an hour later, or if I had not been looking for those strays at all." "But you did ride that direction, and you did find me," Penelope said, taking his hand. "And everything that has come after all of this, it exists because you chose to help someone who needed help." "I got far more than I gave," Isaiah said. "I gave you water and hope. You gave me everything else. A family, a home, a reason to be the best man I can be." "We gave each other everything," Penelope corrected. "That is how this works." They sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned from gold to purple to deep blue. Stars began to emerge, the same stars that had watched over them for all these years, bearing witness to the miracle of two broken people finding each other in the vastness of the Utah desert, and building something beautiful from the ashes of their separate pasts. The next few years brought changes, as all years do. Abigail graduated from veterinary school and returned to the ranch, setting up a practice that served not just the Double J but all the surrounding ranches. Samuel married a sweet-natured young woman from town named Elizabeth, and they gave Isaiah and Penelope their first grandchild in 1903, a baby boy they named Isaiah James. Holding his grandson for the first time, Isaiah looked at Penelope with tears in his eyes. "We have come a long way from that day in the desert. We have come exactly where we were meant to be," Penelope said, watching her husband bond with his namesake. Thomas surprised everyone by moving to Santa Fe to pursue art, and while they missed him, they were proud that he was following his passion. He sent letters and paintings, and visited often enough that they did not lose touch. Mrs. Chen retired in 1905, moving to Salt Lake City to be near her daughter and grandchildren. She left tearfully, hugging Penelope tight. "You have been like a daughter to me," she said. "I am so glad Isaiah found you that day." "I am glad too," Penelope said, crying. "For so many reasons, but you are one of them. Thank you for taking me in, for teaching me, for being my friend." As 1910 approached, bringing with it a new decade, Isaiah and Penelope were in their late 40s and early 50s. They had weathered the transition into the 20th century with grace, adapting to changes while holding onto the core values that had always guided them. The ranch was prosperous, their children were thriving, and they had grandchildren who brought new joy into their lives. One evening, Isaiah asked Penelope if she wanted to take a ride with him, just the two of them. She agreed immediately, and they saddled up, riding out toward the northeast, toward the valley that had been theirs since the beginning. It was late summer, and the valley was lush and green, exactly as it had been all those years ago when Isaiah had first brought her here. They dismounted and walked to their old spot by the creek, and Isaiah spread a blanket with the same care he had shown the first time. "Why did you bring me here today?" Penelope asked, though she thought she knew. "Because this is where everything really began for us," Isaiah said. "This is where I asked you to marry me, where we started talking about our future. I wanted to come back here and tell you that every promise I made to you that day, I have tried my best to keep. I wanted to tell you that loving you has been the greatest adventure of my life. I wanted to tell you that if I had to live it all again, I would not change a single thing, because it all led me to you." Penelope felt tears slide down her face. You gave me water and hope that day in the desert, but you have given me so much more than that over all these years. You have given me love, family, purpose, joy. You have shown me what it means to be truly cherished. You saved my life, Isaiah Young, in every way a person can be saved. And you saved mine, Isaiah said, pulling her close. I was just going through the motions before you. Now I am living, really living, and it is all because of you. They sat in their valley, holding each other as the sun set and the stars emerged, two people who had found each other against all odds and built a life that exceeded any dream either had dared to have. The desert had tried to take Penelope, but Isaiah had given her water and hope, and from that single act of compassion had grown a love story that would be told in the Young family for generations to come. The years continued to pass, bringing more grandchildren, more changes, more of life's inevitable mix of joy and sorrow. But through it all, Isaiah and Penelope remained anchored to each other, their love the foundation upon which everything else was built. In the summer of 1920, as they approached their 70th birthdays, they celebrated their 37th wedding anniversary with a party that brought the entire family and half the county to the Double J. Samuel ran the ranch now, with Abigail handling all the veterinary needs and consulting on breeding programs. Thomas had become a renowned Western artist whose paintings hung in galleries from Santa Fe to San Francisco. There were 9 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren, with more on the way. As the party wound down and the sun began to set, Isaiah and Penelope slipped away from the crowd, walking hand in hand to the porch where they had spent so many evenings. They sat in their rocking chairs, the ones Isaiah had made when they turned 60, and looked out over the ranch that had been their whole world. "You have any regrets?" Isaiah asked, breaking the comfortable silence. "Not a single one," Penelope said without hesitation. "Everything I have, everything I am, it is all because you found me that day. You are my miracle, Isaiah Young. And you are mine, Penelope Young. You always have been from that very first moment." They sat together as darkness fell, 2 old hands clasped together, 2 hearts beating in sync, 2 souls who had found each other in the wilderness and never let go. The desert had tried to claim Penelope Foster all those years ago, but love had saved her, love had transformed her, and love had given her a life richer and fuller than she had ever imagined possible. And as the stars emerged overhead, the same stars that had watched over them that first night when Isaiah gave her water and hope, it seemed they shone just a little bit brighter, as if the universe itself was celebrating this enduring love story born from desperation and compassion in the wild Utah desert so many years ago. The rest of their days were spent in the warmth of family, the satisfaction of a life well lived, and the deep, abiding love that had been their greatest treasure. When Isaiah passed peacefully in his sleep at the age of 76, Penelope held his hand and whispered her gratitude for every moment they had shared. She followed him less than a year later, and they were buried side by side on a hill overlooking their valley, the place where their love had first been spoken aloud. Their descendants continued to run the Double J for generations, always remembering the story of how it had all begun, with a dying woman in the desert and a cowboy who had chosen compassion over convenience, and in doing so had found the love of his life. It was a story told at family gatherings, a reminder that sometimes the worst moments of our lives are the doorways to the best things that will ever happen to us, if we are brave enough to walk through them and wise enough to recognize the angels who appear in our darkest hours, wearing dusty hats and carrying canteens of water and hope.